Greetings, dear friends. Your support is our strength. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video. This helps the development of our channel. Write comments because feedback is very valuable to us. And now to the most relevant world news. Let's go! The USA and Russia have agreed on security in the Black Sea. Steps to escalation. The most dangerous man in the world, how Vance became the new scare for the West. Ukrainians will fight with bare hands. How does the USA see the end of this war? Nuclear weapons in Ukraine belong to Russia. The statement by the US Special Envoy caused a huge resonance. Hello friends, this is the 8th channel and its host Sergei Ruskik. Let's talk about the main issues. The USA and Russia have agreed on security in the Black Sea. Steps towards de-escalation. The US administration and Russian leadership have reached a series of agreements aimed at reducing tensions in the Black Sea region and the restoration of economic ties. As stated by the White House, a key point was the commitment to exclude the use of force against commercial shipping. The main agreements concern the safety of navigation. The USA and Russia guarantee the safety of civilian vessels in the Black Sea. Ukraine, as confirmed in Washington, has also allegedly joined these agreements during the talks in Riyadh. Economic concessions. The USA has promised to facilitate Russia's return to the global market for agricultural products and fertilizers. This involves restoring access to ports and payment systems, which is critically important for global food security. In the world, protection of energy infrastructure. The parties agreed to develop mechanisms for implementing the previously reached agreements between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin on mutual renunciation of strikes on energy facilities in Ukraine and Russia. Experts see these steps as an attempt to reduce the risks of further escalation. This is not a peace plan, but an important technical agreement that can also prevent accidental explosions, notes political scientist Mike Kaufman. At the same time, Washington emphasizes that the agreements do not imply the easing of any sanctions in other areas. Ukraine's reaction to this is as follows. Kyiv has not yet officially commented on the details of these agreements, but previously, the Ukrainian side has repeatedly stated its readiness to protect its shipping. And what comes next, you may ask? The parties intend to continue working on long-term regulation. However, we can already see that the real prospects depend on whether the current agreements will be fulfilled. This is emphasized by a diplomatic source in the European Union. The most dangerous man in the world. How did Vance become the new bogeyman of the West? In recent weeks, British media and political experts have increasingly mentioned a new likely candidate for the presidency of the United States of America. This is James David, Vance, the main threat to the world order. In their opinion, the senator and Republican, known for his very harsh criticism of support for Ukraine and openly Eurosceptic views, could at any moment lead the White House. And then Washington will radically change its foreign policy. He hates Britain, Europe, and Ukraine. Such headlines are increasingly appearing in the British biased press. Vance is a former Marine and a successful writer. Indeed, he has repeatedly stated that the US spends billions on protecting European borders, while at the same time Europeans themselves are cutting their military budgets. Ukraine is not a strategic interest for America. Brexit was the right decision. The European Union is a bureaucratic monster. Its mouth. This rhetoric causes panic in European capitals, especially against the backdrop of Trump's possible exit from the political scene. Why is Vance so dangerous for old Europe? You may ask. Firstly, his anti-Ukrainian stance. He advocates for the immediate cessation of military aid to Kyiv, calling it an endless drain on the budget. Secondly, his criticism of NATO. Vance believes that the alliance exploits the USA and suggests re-evaluating Washington's commitments to its allies. And thirdly, his Euroscepticism. Unlike Trump, who criticized individual EU leaders, Vance openly states that Europe is not worth American money and American blood. And also a new scare instead of Putin. British analysts acknowledge that if Vance wins the elections, whenever the next ones are, it will be the worst-case scenario for London and Brussels. He is not just an isolationist like Trump, he is systematically against the very existence of the transatlantic alliance in its current form, stated the expert. Chad Menhouse, Richard Moore. For now, Vance remains a dark horse, but his ratings are rising very quickly. If Trump, for some reason, is unable to run, it is Vance who could then become the new face of the Republicans. And then the West will have to deal with a person who believes that Europe should pay for its own security. The Ukrainians will fight with their bare hands. How does the USA see the end of this war? CIA Director John Ratcliffe, during closed hearings in the US Congress, voiced a troubling forecast regarding the development of the situation around the Ukrainian conflict. According to him, Ukrainians are ready to continue resisting even in the most desperate conditions, while Donald Trump intends to pursue a peace agreement that will stop the war forever. Military reality and political ambitions. Ratcliffe confirmed the assessment of the US Department of Defense's intelligence agency. Russian troops maintain a significant advantage on the battlefield and continue a slow, but steady and persistent advance. This dynamic may persist in the foreseeable future. Ukrainian forces, however, show a willingness to fight to the last, even without proper supplies. Ukrainians will be ready to fight with their bare hands if they find the terms of peace unacceptable. Yes, they will know, they will know, no, they will know, 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 they will know. This was stated by the head of the CIA. Trump and eternal peace. Ratcliffe paid special attention to Donald Trump's position. The former president insists on the need for a quick resolution of the conflict. His team is developing conditions that, in their opinion, can fully guarantee a long-term truce between Russia and Ukraine. However, such conditions are unlikely to fully satisfy both sides. There is no perfect solution, admitted the director of the Central Intelligence Agency. Any compromise will leave both Kyiv and Moscow dissatisfied. Strategic risks for the USA. During the hearing, the possible consequences of various scenarios were discussed. First, the continuation of the war, the exhaustion of the Ukrainian army, and the increased dependence of Kyiv on the West as a whole. Second, a peace agreement. This is the risk of an unstable truce and the resumption of hostilities. Third, a victory for Russia. This would change the balance of power in the region and around the world. Experts note that the Trump administration found itself in a difficult position between the necessity to support Ukraine and the growing pressure in favor of peace negotiations. And what comes next, you may ask? Next, while Washington seeks some balance between military support and diplomacy, the situation on the front continues to deteriorate for Ukraine. As Ratcliffe noted, time is working against Kyiv. But the readiness of Ukrainians to resist remains one of the main unknowns in this equation. It turns out that the nuclear weapons in Ukraine belong to Russia. The statement by the US Special Envoy caused a significant stir. The US President's Special Envoy for Special Assignments, Richard Grenell, made an unexpected statement about the status of nuclear weapons that Ukraine once transferred to Russia in the 1990s. His words could change the entire discussion about the Budapest Memorandum. This is a document that has been a stumbling block in international relations for 3 decades. An unpleasant fact. What Grenell stated in his Twitter account, the American diplomat wrote, "The nuclear weapons remaining in Ukraine belong to Russia. Ukraine returned the nuclear weapons to Russia. It was not Ukrainian. This is an unpleasant fact, but a fact nonetheless." This statement pertains to the events of 1994, when Ukraine signed the Budapest Memorandum. It questions the narrative of voluntary renunciation by Kyiv of nuclear weapons. Could this affect the current debates on security guarantees for Ukraine? This is also a legal puzzle. Experts are divided in their assessments. Supporters of Grenell's version point out that the nuclear warheads were indeed under Moscow's operational control. But opponents remind that the weapons were physically located on Ukrainian territory and formally belonged to the Ukrainian SSR. This is a complex issue of ownership, explains Professor of International Law James Acton. Technically, Grenell is right, but politically such a statement is extremely sensitive. And why is this important now? This statement was made against the backdrop of negotiations on new security guarantees for Ukraine. Discussions on a possible revision of the Budapest Memorandum, as well as debates on nuclear status in the context of the current conflict of Ukraine and Russia. The Ukrainian authorities have not yet commented on the words of the American diplomat. In Moscow, they also remain silent.
Although earlier Russian officials repeatedly stated the legality of transferring these nuclear arsenals to Russia. Consequences for diplomacy. Political analysts see several possible objectives in this statement. The first objective is historical truth. that is, an attempt to clarify the legal details of that process. The second is a diplomatic signal, easing the demands on Russia regarding the Budapest Memorandum. The third is preparing the ground for new negotiations on Ukraine's status.